Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something we all do all the time, right?
Yeah.
But we don't often stop and think about it too much. It's
Mm.
communication. And we've got a whole bunch of research and real world examples to go through today. And I think by the end of this, you'll see communication in a whole new light.
It's amazing, isn't it, how we just take it for granted. I mean, we
Mm.
just do it. It's like breathing.
Yeah.
But then when you start thinking about it, you realize just how important it is in every part of our lives.
For sure.
Getting that job you've always wanted, or
Yeah.
making sure that your closest relationships are strong and healthy. Communication can be the thing that makes it work or not.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. A lot of our sources today are really focused on how important communication is in the workplace. I mean, one of them even said that it's the make or break thing when it comes to projects succeeding. What do you think about that?
Well, there's this one case study, right, about a software team. And they had this tiny miscommunication about a small part of the design.
Uh.
And you know what? It turned into weeks of being behind schedule.
Oh, wow.
And they wasted so much time and money because of it. I think that really shows how important it is to be super clear, especially at work.
Yeah.
Because even a little misunderstanding can lead to missing deadlines, arguments, and a bunch of frustration.
Absolutely. It's not just about getting things done quickly. It's also about everyone feeling good and working together well. But, okay, work is important. But what about our personal relationships? I feel like that's where communication really matters, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Our sources all say that communication is like the foundation for trust and feeling close in any relationship. What are your thoughts on that?
It's so true. Being able to tell someone you love them, work through disagreements,
Yeah.
and be there for each other when things are tough,
Mm-hmm.
it all comes down to how well you communicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was this interesting study I read where couples who really listened to each other when they were arguing ended up being way happier in their relationship.
Oh, wow.
It makes you think about how even the small conversations we have can really affect our relationships in the long run.
That makes a lot of sense. This reminds me of this one time I was texting my friend about meeting up for dinner, but I accidentally sent the text to my boss.
Oh,
It
no.
was so embarrassing, but it definitely shows how even a tiny mistake in communication can lead to some awkward moments, especially now with all the technology we use.
I bet. Trying to fix that must have been interesting. It does make you think about how hard it is to communicate well sometimes.
For sure.
There are so many things that can make it difficult. All the different cultures we have, the way technology is always changing, and even just how we're feeling at any given moment.
Speaking of challenges, one of the things we read said that technology, even though it helps us connect in a lot of ways, can also create new barriers to really communicating well. Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it, right? We're constantly getting messages, emails, and everything, and we feel like we have to reply right away.
Yeah.
And because of that, we often misunderstand each other, or we just don't go deep enough in our conversations. And then there's the whole thing about, when you're just texting, you're emailing, you miss out on all those little facial expressions and body language cues,
Yeah.
which would make things even more complicated.
Right. It's like we're losing the ability to really connect with each other on a deeper level. But there's this one thing that really struck me in one of our sources today. It said that even when we're face to face with someone, we're often more focused on what we're going to say next instead of really listening to what the other person is saying.
It's true. We've
Yeah.
all done that. I know I have.
Right.
But if you think about it, how many arguments, misunderstandings, or just missed connections happen because we're not truly listening?
Probably a lot.
There's so much research on this, and it shows that even getting a little bit better at listening can make a huge difference in how well we communicate.
So basically, if we want to be better communicators, we need to start by becoming better listeners.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about what we're doing in this deep dive today. We're going to explore some really practical tips and tools that can help you become a much better communicator in all areas of your life.
Mm.
But before we jump into all that, maybe we should take a step back and think about the bigger picture here for a second.
Yeah, if everyone was really good at communicating, what would the world even be like? It's kind of hard to imagine.
Right. Well, one of the articles we read had this really interesting idea. Imagine if everyone worked together better at their jobs, and if people felt closer in their personal lives, and maybe even fewer arguments happening all over the world. It might seem a little unrealistic, but it shows just how powerful good communication can be.
That's a really cool thought. It's not just about avoiding problems or getting what we want. It's about understanding each other better and making the world a more peaceful place. Okay, so we've talked about how important communication is and how tricky it can be and how it can even change the world if we do it right. But how do we actually get better at it ourselves? Where do we even start?
That's the big question, right? Luckily, the stuff we read gave us some good places to begin. One that stood out to me was this idea of being self-aware, like understanding how our own feelings and biases can affect the way we communicate. That's got to be the first step.
That's so true. I know I've let my emotions get in the way before, especially when things get heated, like something I'm definitely working on myself.
We're all learning, right?
Hmm.
But even taking small steps can make a difference. Another thing that kept coming up was empathy. Trying to see things from the other person's point of view, even if we don't agree with them, can really change things.
I get what you mean. It's like putting yourself in their shoes, right? Not just hearing what they're saying, but really understanding where they're coming from and what they've been through.
Exactly. And that goes hand in hand with actively listening, which we talked about before. It's not enough to just sit there and hear the words. You have to really engage with the person, ask questions to make sure you understand, and show them that you care about what they have to say.
It's like that saying, seek first to understand, then to be understood. You're not just waiting for your turn to talk, you're creating a space where you can both connect and have a real conversation.
You got it. One of the articles even had a tip for being a better listener. They said you should try to repeat back to the person what you heard them say, but in your own words. Not only does that make sure you got it right, but it also shows them that you're really paying attention and present in the moment.
It's like saying, hey, I'm not just hearing you, I'm really listening. And that can make a big difference in building trust. But what about when you need to express your own thoughts and feelings? How do you do that in a way that's clear and respectful without being too aggressive or dismissive?
That's where being assertive comes in. It's about being able to communicate your needs and boundaries in a way that's clear and respectful without being manipulative or aggressive. One of the sources had this really cool framework for assertive communication. They called it the DES model.
DESC. What's that?
It stands for describe, express, specify, and consequences. So first, you describe the situation, just the facts, no judgments. Then you talk about how you feel about it using I statements. After that, you say what you want to see happen differently. And finally, you talk about what might happen, both good and bad, if things change. It's a pretty simple model, but it's really helpful when you're dealing with tough conversations.
That's really helpful. It gives you a clear path to follow when you need to communicate your needs. What about when people have really different communication styles? Like, what if one person is very direct and the other person is more indirect? How do you make that work?
That's where being flexible and adaptable is important. One of the articles talked about how there's no one right way to communicate. The key is to know your own style and be willing to adjust it based on who you're talking to.
So it's about being aware of the situation and changing your communication style to fit. Makes sense.
Exactly. It's kind of like learning a new language. The more you understand the little things about communication, the better you become at it. And the better you become, the more connected and meaningful your conversations will be.
I like that comparison. It's not about memorizing a bunch of rules. It's about being curious, understanding other people's perspectives, and really wanting to connect with them on a deeper level.
And that's where the magic happens, right? When we move past just sharing information and really start connecting with each other, that's when communication can truly change things.
So it seems like we're talking about a big shift in how we think about communication. It's not just a way to get things done. It's about connecting with people and understanding each other better.
Exactly. It's not about winning arguments or always being right. It's about finding common ground and building relationships.
And that takes work, doesn't it? It's not always easy to be present and listen with an open mind or to speak up for ourselves in a confident but respectful way, but it sounds like it's worth the effort.
It definitely is. And all the research we looked at today has given us a ton of tools and techniques to help us along the way. It's about being more aware of ourselves, practicing empathy, becoming better listeners, and finding our own authentic way of communicating.
You know, one of the things that's really sticking with me from this deep dive is that communication isn't just a skill, it's more like an art form. It's about subtle details, it's about being intentional, and it's about the connection we create with other human beings.
I like that. It's not just about conveying information, it's about creating something meaningful together, something that everyone understands.
It's like we're all writing a story together, and the way we communicate shapes how that story unfolds.
And that brings us to a final thought for you all today. Think about a time when you felt like someone really heard you and understood what you were saying. What made that conversation so special? Was it the words they used, the way they spoke, or something else entirely?
And then think about a time when communication didn't go so well and it led to a misunderstanding or an argument. What could have been done differently? Were there assumptions made, different viewpoints that weren't considered, or missed opportunities to connect on a deeper level?
Imagine if everyone communicated with clarity and empathy, genuinely trying to understand each other. What would our world look like? How would your relationships, your work, even how you feel about yourself be different?
Those are great questions to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of communication. We hope you learned some valuable things today and that you're inspired to keep exploring this amazing and essential art form.
Remember, even small changes in the way we communicate can make a big difference, leading to a more connected, caring, and understanding world.
Until next time, keep those conversations going and remember the power to connect is in your hands.